Carl Jung recorded a psychological phenomenon so unsettling that he regarded it as one of the most profound transformations he had ever encountered in human behavior. In numerous instances, he encountered patients, particularly empaths, who appeared fragile and kind until a pivotal internal shift occurred. These individuals, referred to here as the awakened ones, embodied Jung's theory of shadow integration, not only transforming their personal lives, but also reshaping psychological theory. Have you ever felt like your kindness was mistaken for weakness? Comment 1 if you've ever had someone underestimate you because of your empathy. Comment 2 if you've always known your sensitivity was a source of strength. Jung devoted many years to examining behaviors in empaths that closely aligned with the tenets of shadow work. What he found remains deeply unsettling to many psychologists even now. Those who are most compassionate are not weak. Rather, their strength lies dormant, waiting to be honed. Jung's records from the Zurich clinic uncovered a troubling trend. Time and again, patients came in bearing identical emotional injuries. Empaths broken down over time by people professing to care for them. These individuals made excuses for their bruises, attributed their depression to personal failings, and consistently felt compelled to apologize simply for being. Jung recorded these findings across numerous cases. These people had dedicated their existence to internalizing the suffering of others, enduring parental alcoholism, cheating partners, and familial dysfunction. They served as what could be termed the emotional shock absorbers within their social environments. They embodied Jung's insight that emotionally sensitive individuals frequently become storage vessels for communal psychological suffering. The most chilling revelation for Jung was that these empaths didn't merely survive abuse, they organized and internalized it with methodical precision. When Jung inquired about their relationships, he anticipated disjointed reflections typical of traumatized individuals. What he uncovered completely altered his understanding of empathic personalities. These individuals weren't simply broken, they had been analyzing their abuse in depth. Jung discovered that empaths mentally cataloged detailed information about every individual who had wronged them. They were acutely aware of their abuser's triggers, vulnerabilities, and core fears. They had charted emotional dynamics with the precision of a surgeon. This information was never weaponized until an event drove them beyond their threshold. Jung described the empath's psyche not as a repository of suffering, but as a tactical control center awaiting the moment of deployment. If you felt underestimated in your perception, this message resonates. I see everything. Jung came to understand that he wasn't confronting mere victims, he was encountering hidden psychological prodigies. These individuals demonstrated traits that aligned with Jung's ideas about the highly evolved psychological abilities that certain people possess. The brilliance of these empaths lay not in inventiveness, but in their skill at unearthing emotional truths. They were capable of uncovering profound emotional pain simply by observing subtle facial cues. Jung started evaluating their skills by introducing them to colleagues without disclosing any background information. Within moments, the empaths could detect early life traumas, behavioral trends, and workplace anxieties. They maintained a remarkably high accuracy rate, regularly exceeding 95%. What unnerved Jung the most was realizing that these empaths were not clairvoyant. They were simply attuned to a level of detail far beyond the norm. What most would label as intuition, they understood as careful observation and information gathering. Jung began to grasp a groundbreaking insight: empaths not only experience emotions more intensely, but they also interpret emotional data with exceptional speed and precision. Their cognitive wiring is specifically tuned for recognizing patterns in people's behavior. Society had conditioned them to view their unique ability as a burden. Whenever they attempted to articulate their observations, such as deceit manipulation or concealed motives, they were dismissed as overly emotional or too sensitive. As a result, they internalized the need to suppress their voice, question their insights, and apologize for noticing what others ignored. Silence doesn't erase truth, it builds up. In these cases, that buildup had spanned decades. Jung noted that empaths aren't driven to the edge by emotional overload, but by the invalidation of their emotional reality. He concluded that what appeared to be mental breakdowns were actually moments of psychological awakening. Jung found a repeated theme in these cases. The transformation occurred not over time, but in a sudden, intense event, reflecting his concept of shadow integration during periods of extreme stress. The catalyst was invariably betrayal, specifically from someone the empath had wholly trusted and shielded. Time and again, Jung recorded the same pattern: empaths uncovering infidelity, financial deceit, or emotional exploitation by someone dear to them. The true devastation didn't come from the betrayal itself, but from the dawning awareness that they had long seen and dismissed the warning signs. As typical of empaths, these patients remained silent, internalized. The suffering took on the blame and made increased efforts to be ideal companions, offspring, or friends. Everything shifted at what can be described as the clarity event, when the empath's ability to recognize behavioral patterns finally overrode their desire to see the good in others, embodying Jung's idea of psychological awakening. The typical expectation is that empaths would break down emotionally, crying, yelling, or collapsing, something even their abusers anticipated. These abusers braced for an outburst of emotions, but what actually occurred left everyone deeply unsettled. The empaths responded with eerie calmness, which Jung recorded as the moment analytical insight fused with emotional awareness. Jung noted repeatedly what could be described as one of the most unsettling psychological shifts imaginable. The empaths did not lash out or become aggressive. They calmly began to articulate the truth. They disclosed all the information they had mentally stored and endured doing so with measured, almost clinical exactness rather than malice. They acted like surgeons, methodically pointing out each toxic element before discarding it. This was not about retaliation, it was about achieving clarity. At last, these empaths employed their full perceptive power not to rationalize abuse, but to illuminate it. Jung's findings resonated with the old adage, nothing is as fierce as someone who has come to fully trust their own judgment. Jung recognized that this recurring theme wasn't about vengeance. It embodied what he defined as shadow integration. It was the point at which an individual ceased rejecting the aspects of themselves they had been conditioned to suppress. The empath's shadow side was not malevolent. It consisted of their stifled intellect, ignored intuition, and unacknowledged power. Do you relate to the idea of having a shadow side that's actually your hidden strength? Comment 1 if you've embraced parts of yourself you once suppressed. Comment 2 if you're still learning how to trust those parts of yourself. Upon embracing these hidden qualities, they achieved what Jung considered psychological wholeness. What unsettled Jung most was the enduring nature of this transformation. These individuals no longer reverted to appeasing others, nor did they feel guilty for asserting firm boundaries. They stopped doubting their insights and evolved into the kind of empaths Jung most feared, those immune to manipulation. The transformation extended beyond just the mental and emotional realms. Jung recorded how these people experienced sweeping life changes within a matter of months. They exited harmful relationships with deliberate and calculated action. They severed ties with toxic relatives calmly without theatrics. They reconstructed their lives independently and on their own conditions. Jung observed that they became what he termed selectively empathetic, still capable of deep compassion, but now cautious about where they directed it. What disturbed Jung most was the effect these evolved empaths had on those around them. Individuals who had previously mistreated them now felt inexplicably uneasy in their presence. These empaths remained neither hostile nor unkind, yet others clearly sensed a profound shift in their demeanor. Jung named this the predator's instinct, the ability of manipulative individuals to detect when their strategies have lost their power. Such people instinctively avoid integrated empaths, much like vampires steer clear of sunlight. Jung remarked, "The awakened empath doesn't have to declare their strength. Others sense it instinctively." Comment, if people began treating you differently once you stood your ground, they often noticed the shift before you even said a word. Jung's deep interest in these empath cases surpassed mere academic curiosity. What unsettled him was seeing aspects of his own psychological journey reflected in their transformations. Jung was, by modern standards, a highly sensitive individual. He personally related to the empath's experience. He understood the agony of perceiving truths others ignored and feeling emotions others refused to acknowledge. These patients compelled Jung to face a troubling question. What occurs when empaths cease absorbing collective pain and begin employing their abilities with intentionality? Jung dedicated years to observing the lives of these patients after their psychological integration. His findings were so profound, they caused him sleepless nights. These people had gone on to achieve exceptional success. Their enterprises flourished due to their ability to intuitively understand clients' unspoken needs. Their new personal relationships were stable as they could swiftly detect emotionally harmful individuals. They made consistently sound decisions because they had learned to fully trust their intuitive insights. Jung came to a chilling realization. These empaths had not diminished in empathy. They had refined it, which also meant they had become strategically astute. They now possessed the ability to influence others just as easily as they had once been influenced. Their grasp of human psychology was so advanced that it rendered them almost all-powerful in interpersonal dynamics. What truly unnerved Jung was that these empowered empaths consciously chose not to misuse their newfound strength. Although capable of ruining those who had harmed them, they instead opted to quietly eliminate toxic influences and move forward. Jung understood that he had seen the emergence of what he named the integrated empath, an individual who combined deep sensitivity with the discernment to direct their energy wisely. Jung's personal notes express his awe. "I have observed something both beautiful and terrifying. These people evolved into the very thing manipulators dread, individuals who can perceive their motives clearly and have no dependence on them." If you've reached the stage where you can read others, yet no longer seek their validation, declare, "I see you, but I don't need you." These empathic transformations did not occur in isolation. Jung recorded how such changes disrupted every system these individuals once engaged in. Family structures unraveled not through their destruction, but because they stopped perpetuating dysfunction. Alcoholic relatives had to confront their addictions without empaths absorbing their emotions. Depressed family members were forced to seek validation elsewhere. Manipulative siblings could no longer treat these evolved empaths as emotional punching bags. Jung's realization of the awakened empath's power came from observing how their transformation compelled those around them to either grow or reveal their true selves. Healthy individuals drew strength from their example, while toxic ones betrayed themselves through frantic efforts to drag the empaths back into old habits. Jung noted what can be described as the empath's mirror effect. These transformed people no longer needed to directly challenge others' dysfunction. Their presence alone reflected it back with unsettling clarity. Manipulators avoided them feeling exposed and stripped of their usual tactics, while genuine individuals experienced a sense of safety around them for the first time. According to Jung's research, awakened empaths function as living truth detectors, not by judging, but simply by existing in their integrated state. The most startling revelation came when he introduced these transformed individuals to other patients in his practice. Within minutes, they could pinpoint core emotional wounds and recommend the precise therapy required. Jung recognized that their diagnostic accuracy exceeded his own, despite his decades of training. This sparked an ethical dilemma that troubled him for years. If empaths could naturally attain such profound psychological insight, what would that imply for the future of psychology? Jung began discreetly studying other empaths within his practice, creating what is referred to here as the Integration Observation Protocol, a framework for examining how such transformations naturally unfold. This framework was not conventional therapy, but rather a detailed record of how empaths developed what he termed warrior consciousness following severe betrayal. Across numerous cases, Jung observed consistent stages. The first stage was recognition. Empaths began identifying their repressed shadow aspects, not only their anger, but also their intelligence, strength, and rightful boundaries. They ceased pathologizing their perceptions and instead trusted their emotional intelligence as the highly advanced data processing system it truly was. Have you ever had a moment where you stopped doubting your instincts and just trusted them completely? Comment 1 if that shift changed how you approach relationships. Comment 2 if you're still waiting for that defining moment. The second stage integration was far more intense. Jung observed empaths fusing both their light and shadow sides into what he genuinely called the complete self. They evolved into individuals capable of immense kindness toward the deserving and sharp precision toward those who were not. The third stage application fascinated Jung most. At this point, integrated empaths applied their emotional intelligence strategically rather than merely defensively. They became psychological architects, people able to perceive, influence, and maneuver through human systems with extraordinary accuracy. Jung concluded that such transformed empaths were immune to victimization, detecting manipulation from a distance and dismantling it before it could take hold. These empaths not only healed, but also became resistant to psychological abuse while preserving their ability for authentic love and connection. In Jung's private notes, he expressed awe. I have observed the development of compassion paired with wisdom. He considered them among the most psychologically formidable individuals he had ever known. The final stage of the process, as Jung saw it, was a natural return to service. Integrated empaths did not grow cold or detached. Instead, they became intentional in sharing their abilities. They used their skills to aid other empaths in transformation, forming what Jung recorded as a network of psychologically resilient people. His work with these cases produced ripple effects that persist today. Jung came to understand that empaths were not suffering from mental illness, but were evolutionarily advanced beings existing within systems built to exploit their talents. Jung stopped viewing empathic sensitivity as an ailment to be treated and began recognizing it as a psychological strength that must be understood and safeguarded. However, he also saw a troubling possibility in adverse conditions. These abilities could be dangerous. An empath who had integrated their shadow without ethical balance could become highly manipulative. To address this, Jung formulated what is referred to here as the ethical integration model, chronicling how awakened empaths tended to use their capabilities for healing instead of harm. Jung kept his case files on these transformations highly confidential, aware that if the wrong individuals discovered how to deliberately induce empath transformation, the process could be weaponized. He dispersed his notes across several private journals and never released the full findings while he was alive. In his final notes on these cases, Jung described something remarkable. These individuals lived out their days as balanced warriors capable of immense tenderness toward those who deserved it, and unwavering strength against those who posed harm. They embodied what Jung envisioned as the next step in human evolution, beings able to feel deeply without being shattered, perceive clearly without growing cynical, and love profoundly without losing their sense of self. In the closing stages of his career, Jung noted that these transformed empaths demonstrated the empath's true path not from sensitivity to numbness, but from unconscious absorption to deliberate choice. They did not lose their empathy. They perfected it. Jung left one enduring message for future psychologists: never underestimate a person who has learned to fully trust their own perceptions. The awakened empath, he asserted, represents the most powerful evolution within psychology. Jung's insights about awakened empaths turned out to be more prophetic than he had anticipated. Current research affirms his findings: empaths who integrate their shadow achieve psychological invulnerability. They cannot be gaslighted as they place complete trust in their perceptions. They resist manipulation by recognizing emotional tactics before they fully develop. They cannot be broken, having already endured their lowest points and emerged stronger. What keeps Jung's case studies permanently significant is this: every empath will eventually confront a transformative moment, a betrayal so deep it compels them to decide between continuing as a victim or claiming sovereignty. The real question is not if the empath will reach a breaking point, but whether they will integrate their shadow intentionally, as in Jung's documented cases, or allow it to consume them destructively. Jung's research indicated that when driven to their limits, most empaths opt for integration. They do not turn cruel. They become exacting. They do not forfeit their compassion. They develop resilience. The evolved empath embodies what Jung termed love, with boundaries, an individual capable of deep care while safeguarding themselves completely. Jung's concluding insight into these cases continues to echo in psychological discourse. Such individuals did not transform into different people. They became their truest selves beneath layers of conditioning. Every empath holds within them the potential to become psychologically unshakable. It merely requires the right catalyst, most often a betrayal, to ignite the transformation. Jung once wrote, "The empath's greatest tragedy isn't their sensitivity. It's how long they wait to honor it properly." As we return to the beginning, Jung's records reveal a psychological pattern so unsettling that he called it the most terrifying transformation in human nature. These were not rare anomalies. They represented a core truth about empathic psychology. Jung's studies uncovered a fact that continues to unsettle psychologists. Empaths are not inherently victims, but inherently powerful. Society conditions them to repress their power for the sake of acceptance. When empaths reach their breaking point, they are not collapsing. They are awakening to abilities they have always had. Jung's records expose a truth manipulators wish to conceal. The kindest individuals are often the strongest, as kindness without strength only perpetuates dysfunction. The awakened empaths Jung described are living examples of evolution, people capable of sensing everything and making choices with full consciousness. Over decades, Jung studied patients who appeared fragile and gentle until a pivotal inner shift occurred. His research confirmed that the empath's journey is not toward diminished sensitivity, but toward conscious sensitivity. He recognized that this consciousness is what transforms victims into forces of nature. The most remarkable aspect of Jung's findings is that these transformed empaths retain their ability to love. They simply learn to love themselves as fiercely as they once loved others. For any empath reading, this Jung's key discovery is worth remembering. Your sensitivity is not a weakness, it is a weapon. The moment you consciously wield it is when you become truly powerful, posing no danger to the innocent, but a serious threat to those who would exploit you. This is precisely what the world needs: empaths who recognize their worth, trust their own perceptions, and refuse to dim their light to make others comfortable. Jung's work leaves us with one final question: not whether empaths will transform, but whether they will choose to do so consciously or be forced into it by life. If you are ready to become the integrated empath Jung described, declare, "I choose conscious transformation," because the world does not need more broken empaths. It needs more awakened ones. Jung's research demonstrates that transformation is not only possible, but inevitable. The empath will reach a breaking point. The only question is whether you will control that power or allow it to control you. Do you believe your breaking point will be your undoing or your awakening? Comment 1 if you're ready to consciously transform. Comment 2 if you feel life might force that transformation when the time comes.